is the first day that I've noticed. If you look at the cover, look at the blue shimmers in the lights. Look at that, the blue shimmers in the lights in the windows. That is kind of creepy. That is kind of creepy. Yes, but this is how to sell a haunted house. And it is by Grady Hendrix. And that's GRADYHENDRIX. Now, we're not going to be reading the entire book. Of course, we're not going to be reading the entire book today. But we are going to start it. We are going to start it, and I hope you like it as much as I have so far. Written several different books. Look at all these books that he's written. All these books that he's written. Louise thought it might not go well, so she told her parents she was pregnant over the phone from 3,000 miles away in San Francisco. It wasn't that she had a single doubt about her decision. When those two parallel pink lines had ghosted into view, all her panic dissolved, and she heard her clear, certain voice inside her say, "I am a mother now." But even in the 21st century, it was hard to predict how a pair of Southern parents would react to the news that their 34-year-old unmarried daughter was pregnant. Louise spent all day rehearsing different scripts that would ease them into it, but the minute her mom answered and her dad picked up the kitchen extension, her mind went blank and she blurted it out. "I'm pregnant." She braced herself for the barrage of questions. "Are you sure? Does Ian know? Are you going to keep it? Have you thought about moving back to Charleston? Are you certain this is the best thing? Do you have any idea how hard this will be alone? How are you going to manage?" In the long silence, she prepared her answers. "Yes, not yet, of course. God, no, but I'm doing it anyway. Yes, I'll manage." Over the phone, she heard someone inhale through what sounded like a mouthful of water and realized it was her mom crying. "Oh, Louise," her mother said in a thick voice, and Louise prepared herself for the worst. "I am so happy. You're going to be the best mother I wasn't." Her dad only had one question. Her exact street address. "I don't want any confusion with the cab driver when we land." "Dad," Louise said, "you don't have to come right now." "Of course we do," he said. "You're our Louise." She waited for them on the sidewalk, her heart pounding every time a car turned the corner, until finally a dark blue Nissan showed to stop in front of her building, and her dad helped her mom out of the back seat, and she couldn't wait. She threw herself into her mom's arms like she was a kid again. They took her crib shopping and stroller shopping, and told Louise she was crazy to even consider a cloth diaper service, and discussed feeding techniques and vaccinations and a million decisions Louise would have to make, and bought snot suckers and diapers and onesies and receiving blankets and changing pads and wipes she mixed up the Rolling Stones and the Who and said, "Are you sure?" whenever she ordered dessert. "Dad," Louise said, "Ian is not ready to be a parent." "Who is?" her mother asked, but Louise knew Ian really wasn't ready. Every family visits lasted 3 days too long, and by the end of the week, Louise was counting the hours until she could be alone in her apartment again. The day before her parents' flight home, she holed up in her bedroom doing email while her mom took off her earrings to take a nap, and her dad left to find a copy of Financial Times. If they could do this until lunch and then go out and walk around the Presidio, then dinner, Louise figured everything would be fine. Louise's body had other plans. She felt hungry now. She needed hard-boiled eggs now. She had to get up and go to the kitchen now. So she crept into the living room in her socks, trying not to wake her mom because she couldn't handle another conversation about why she wouldn't let her hair grow out, or why she wouldn't move back to Charleston, or why she should start trying again. Her mom lay asleep on the couch. On one side, a yellow blanket pulled up to her waist. The late morning light brought out her skeleton, the tiny lines around her mouth, her thinning hair, her slack cheeks. For the first time in her life, Louise knew what her mother would look like dead. "I love you," her mom said without opening her eyes. Louise froze. "I know," she said after a moment. "No," her mom said, "you don't." Louise waited for her to add something, but her mom's breathing deepened, got regular, and turned into a snore. Louise continued to the kitchen. Had she overheard half of a dream conversation? Or did her mom mean Louise didn't know she loved her, or how much she loved her, or she wouldn't understand how much her mother loved her until she had a daughter of her own? She worried, added while she ate her hard-boiled egg. Was her mom talking about her living in San Francisco? Did she think Louise had moved this far away to put distance between them? Louise had moved here for school, then stayed for work. Although when you grow up with all your friends telling you how cool your mom was, and even your exes asked about her when they bump into them, you needed some distance if you wanted to live your own life. And sometimes, even their 1,000 miles didn't feel like enough to Louise. She wondered if her mom somehow knew. Then there was her brother. Mark's name had only come up twice in the visit, and Louise knew that it hated her mom that the two of them didn't have a natural relationship. But to be honest, she didn't want a relationship with her brother, natural or otherwise. In San Francisco, she could pretend she was an only child. Louise knew she wasn't a typical older sibling, a cookie-cutter first child. She read the articles and scanned the light skulls, and every second trait applied to her: reliable, structured, responsible, hardworking. She even seen it classified as a disorder, oldest sibling syndrome, and that made her wonder why Mark's disorder was terminal, alcoholism most likely. When people asked why she didn't speak to her brother, Louise told them the story of Christmas 2016, when her mom spent all day cooking, but Mark insisted they meet for dinner at P.F. Chang's, where he showed up late, drunk, twice to order the entire menu, then passed didn't see anything wrong with being happy. Her mom's enforced happiness seemed pathological. She avoided hard conversations about painful subjects. She had a Christian puppet ministry and acted like she was always on stage. The few times she lost it as a mother, she'd snapped, "You're embarrassing me." As if being embarrassed was the worst possible thing that could happen to someone. Maybe that's why she was so certain about her decision to have this baby. Becoming a mother would allow her and her mom to share something just between them. It would bring them closer together. She suspected all the things that annoyed her about her mom were exactly the things that she would make her an incredible grandmother. As Louise brushed eggshell off the counter, she thought that shared motherhood might form a bridge between them, and gradually the walls Louise had needed to protect herself would come down. It wouldn't happen overnight, but that was okay. They had a lifetime to adjust to each other's new roles. A daughter becoming a mother, and a mother becoming a granddaughter. They would have years. As it turned out, she got 5. The next part is called denial. D-E-N-I-A-L. Denial. Chapter 2. The call came as Louise desperately tried to convince her daughter that she was not going to like the Velveteen Rabbit. "We just got all those new library books," she said. "Don't you want?" "Velveteen Rabbit," Poppy insisted. "It's scarier than the Muppet Christmas Carol," Louise told her. "Remember how scary that was when the door knocker turned into the man's face?" "I want Velveteen Rabbit," Poppy said in her voice firm. Louise knew that she should take the path of least resistance and just read Poppy the Velveteen Rabbit, but that would happen over her dead body. She should have checked the package before letting Poppy open it, because of course her mom hadn't sent the check for the Dinosaur Dig summer camp like she promised. But she had randomly sent Poppy a copy of the Velveteen Rabbit because she thought it was Louise's favorite book. It was not Louise's favorite book. It was a source of Louise's childhood nightmares. For the first time, her mom had read it to her when she had been Poppy's age. She burst into tears when the rabbit got taken outside to be burned. "I know," her mom had said, completely misreading the situation. "It is my favorite book, too." The book's emotional cruelty had made 5-year-old Louise's stomach hurt. The thoughtless boy who had abused his toys, and needy toys who had pathologically craved his approval no matter how much he neglected them. The remote and fearsome Nana. The bullying rabbits living in the wild. But her mom kept picking it for her bedtime story, obviously to the fact that Louise would lie rigid while she read, hands gripping the sheets, staring at the ceiling as her mom did all the voices. It was a master class in acting, a star turned by Nancy Joyner, and getting to deliver the performance was the real reason her mom kept picking the book. By the end, they'd both be crying, but for different reasons. "Does it hurt?" said the rabbit. "Sometimes," said the skin horse. "When you are real, you don't mind being hurt." Louise had dated a girl at Beckley who had the exact quote tattooed on her forearm, and she wasn't surprised when she found out that she had gave herself tattoos with a sewing needle taped to a pig pen. The Velveteen Rabbit confused masochism with love. It wallowed in loneliness, and what kind of awful thing was a skin horse anyway? Louise wouldn't make the same mistake with Poppy. There would be no Velveteen Rabbit in this house, even if she had to fight dirty. You're going to hurt the feelings of all those new library books, Louise said, and instantly Poppy's eyes got wide. They're going to be sad if you don't read them first. You're going to make them cry. Lying to Poppy felt awful. Pretending inanimate objects had feelings felt manipulative, but every time Louise did, it felt less guilty. Her mom had manipulated them throughout their childhood with impossible promises and flat-out lies. Elves are real, but you only see one if you're absolutely quiet for this entire car ride. I'm allergic to dogs, so we can't have one. And she vowed to always be honest and straightforward with her own child. Of course, the second Poppy turned out to be an early dogger. Louise had adjusted her approach, but she didn't rely on it nearly as much as her mother. That was important. They're really gonna cry, Poppy asked. Damn it, Mom. Yes, Louise said, and all their pages are going to get all wet, which, thank God, is her ringtone activated, playing the eccentric escalating major chords of Summit with its frantic bird whistles, which meant the call was from her family. She looked at the screen, expecting it to read Mom, Dad's landline, or Aunt Honey. Instead, it said Mark. Her hands got cold. He needs money, Louise thought. He's in San Francisco, and he needs a place to stay. He's been arrested, and Mom and Dad finally put their foot down. Mark, she said, answering, feeling her pulse snap in her throat. Is everything all right? You need to sit down, he said. Automatically, she stood up. What happened? She asked. Don't freak out, he said. She started to freak out. What did you do? She asked. Mom and Dad are in a better place, he said. What do you mean? I mean, he said, and carefully put the next sentence together. They're not suffering Tuesday, Louise said. They weren't suffering on Tuesday. You need to tell me what's happening. I'm trying, he snapped, and his words sounded mushy. Jesus, I'm sorry for not doing this right away. I'm sure you'd be perfect at this. Mom and Dad are dead. The lights went out all over Northern California. They went out across the bay. They went dark in Oakland and Alameda. Darkness rolled across the Bay Bridge, and Yerba Buena turned as black as the water lapping in its shores. The lights went out in the Ferry Building, the Tenderloin, the Theater District. Darkness advanced on Louise. Street by street, from the Mission to the park to her building, the apartment downstairs, the front hall, the entire world went black except for a single spotlight shining down on Louise, standing in her living room gripping the phone. No, she said, because Mark was wrong about things all the time. He had once invested in a snake farm. They got T-boned on the corner of Coleman and McCann's by some asshole in SUV, Mark said. I'm already talking to a lawyer. He was at night, and this was pouring down rain. The car rolled, and it sliced her arm off at the shoulder. It's horrible. She died in the ambulance. I know finding these details doesn't make it easier. Mark, Louise said, as she needed to breathe. She couldn't breathe. Listen, he said, soft and slurred. I get it. You're where I was earlier, but it's important to think of them as energy. They didn't suffer, right? Because our bodies are just vessels for energy, and energy can't feel pain. Louise's knuckles tightened around the phone. Are you drunk? He immediately got defensive, which meant yes. This isn't an easy call for me, he said. I wanted to reach out and tell you that everything is going to be okay. I need to call someone, Louise said, feeling desperate. I need to call Aunt Honey. Call whoever you want, Mark said. But I want you to know that everything is really going to be okay. Mark, Louise snapped. We haven't spoken in 3 years. And you get drunk and call and tell me that Mom and Dad are... She became conscious of Bobby and lowered her voice. Are not doing well, but it's okay. Because their energy... It's not okay. You should have a drink too, he said. When did it happen? Silence on his end of the phone. Then, those details don't matter. That triggered her internal alarms. Yes, they do. He made it sound casual. Like yesterday, around 2 in the morning. I've been dealing with a lot. 41 hours, she said, doing the math. Her parents had been dead for almost 2 days, and she had been walking around like nothing had happened because Mark couldn't be bothered to pick up the phone. She hung up. She looked at Bobby kneeling on the floor by the piano bench, whispering to the library books and petting them, and she saw her mom. Bobby had her mom's blonde hair, her delicately pointed chin, her enormous brown eyes, and her undersized frame. Louise wanted to swoop down, gather her up, bury her face in the sweet smell of her. But that was the kind of grand, theatrical gesture her mom favored. Her mom would never think that it might scare Bobby or make her feel unsafe. Was that Granny? Bobby asked, because she adored her grandmother and learned to recognize the family ringtone. It was just Aunt Honey, Louise lied, barely holding herself together. I need to call your grandmother. You stay here and watch another episode of Paw Patrol, and when you're done, we'll make a special dinner. Bobby bounced up. She was never allowed to use the iPad by herself, so the exciting new privilege distracted her from the sad library books and from who had been on the phone. Louise got her settled on the sofa with the iPad and walked into the bedroom and closed the door. Mark had made a mistake. He was drunk. He had once invested thousands of dollars in a Christmas tree factory in Mexico that turned out to be a scam because he had a gut feeling about it. Louise needed to know for sure. She didn't think she could stand it if she called home and no one answered. So she called Aunt Honey. Her fingers wouldn't go where she wanted and kept opening her weather app, but she finally managed to make them tap on Aunt Honey's phone number for her contacts. Her aunt, great aunt technically, picked up on the first ring. What? She barked through her phlegm-clogged vocal cords. Aunt Honey, Louise said, then her throat closed she couldn't say anything. "Oh, Lulu," Aunt Honey croaked, and the two words combined all the heartbreak in the world. Everything went very quiet. Louise's nervous system made a high-pitched tone in her ears. She didn't know what to say next. "I don't know what to do," she finally said, her voice small and miserable. "Sweetheart," Aunt Honey said, "pack a nice dress and come home." Louise's mom also had a pathological inability to discuss death. When her Uncle Arthur had a heart attack and drove his riding lawnmower through the greenhouse, she told Mark and Louise that she and her dad were going to Myrtle Beach for a vacation, and they parked them with Aunt Honey. When Sue Esther's older sister died of leukemia in 5th grade, Louise's mom had told her she was too young to go to the funeral. Her friendship with Sue never was the same after that. Louise's mom had claimed to be allergic to all pets, including goldfish, for their entire childhood, and it wasn't until Louise got out of school that her mom revealed she simply never wanted anything in the house that might die. "It would have upset you and your brother too much," she explained. When Louise had Poppy, she vowed to be honest about death. She knew that stating the facts plainly would be the best way for Poppy to understand that death was a part of life. She would answer all of Poppy's questions with absolute honesty, and if she didn't know something, they'd figure it out together. "I'm going to Charleston tomorrow," Louise told Poppy that night, sitting on the storytime chair beside her bed in the glow of the plastic goose lamp. "And I want you to understand why. Your grandmother and grandfather had a very bad accident." Louise saw safety glass exploding, metal tearing and twisting, and their bodies got very hurt. Badly. They got hurt so badly that they stopped working, and your grandmother and grandfather died. Poppy shot up in bed, smashing into Louise like a cannonball, wrapping her arms around her ribs too tight, bursting into a long, needy wail. "No," Poppy screamed. "No, no." Louise tried to explain that it was going to be okay, that she was sad too, and they would be sad together, and that being sad together when someone died was normal. But every time she started to speak, Poppy wiped her face back and forth against Louise like she was trying to scrape it off, screaming, "No, no, no." Finally, when she realized Poppy wasn't going to stop anytime soon, Louise eased herself into the bed and held her daughter in her arms until Poppy cried herself to sleep. So much for explaining death the healthy way. Louise held Poppy feverishly, limp body for hours, wishing harder than ever she wished before that for just 60 seconds someone would hold her too. But no one holds moms. She remembered her mom holding her in her lap while they sat in Dr. Rector's waiting room, where it smelled like alcohol swabs and finger pricks, distracting Louise by telling her that all the other children were there for her. "That little boy over there," her mom said, pointing to the 6-year-old picking his nose. "He picked his nose so much that all he can smell now are his fingerprints, and they're getting him a nose transplant. And that one chewing the little mother's purse strap, they accidentally swapped his brain for dogs. That little girl, she ate apple seeds, and they're growing apple trees inside her tummy." "Is she going to be all right?" Louise asked. "Of course," her mom said. "Apples are delicious. That's why they're here. Christmas newsletter going out to whoever called hundreds of people. None of it would ever happen again. Her mom had opinions, so many opinions that sometimes Louise felt like she couldn't breathe. The Velveteen Rabbit was Louise's favorite book. You should never throw anything away because it always could be reused. Children shouldn't be allowed to wear black until they're 18. Women shouldn't cut their hair short until they turn 50. Louise worked too hard and should move back to Charleston. Mark was a misunderstood genius, simply waiting to find his place in the world. All those opinions, all her crafting, all her notes and phone calls, her constant need to be the center of attention, her exhausting need to be liked by everyone, her mood swings from euphoric highs to depressed lows, it made her mom who she was. But it was an early age. It also taught Louise that her mom was unreliable in a way her father was not. Louise had never seen her dad upset in his life. The middle school she recorded Nirvana Unplugged over the video of his paper presentation of the Southern Regional Science Association. When he found out, he'd taken a long moment to absorb the information and then said, "Well, that'll teach me to have a big head." When she wanted to know about electricity, he showed her how to use an ohmmeter, and they had gone around the house, sticking its test probes into the wall sockets and touching them to batteries. So she used her Christmas money that year to go to Radio Shack and buy memes getting started in electronics. And she and her dad had taught themselves to solder, making moisture detectors and tone generators together in the garage. Louise slid out of Bobby's bed, careful not to wake her, and crept into the kitchen. There was something she needed to do. She stood in the dark and scrolled through her contacts until she found Mom and Dad's landline. She looked away while she got her breath, breathing under control, and then touched the number. They still had an answering machine. "You've reached the Joyner residence," her father recorded. Voice said in exactly the same rhythm she had heard for decades. She knew every pause, every change in inflection is an entire message. She mouthed along with it silently. "We're willing, unwilling, or unable to answer the phone call right now. Please leave a clear and detailed message after the tone, and we'll call you back at our earliest convenience." The machine beeped, and across the country, her parents' kitchen, Louise heard it click to record. "Mom," Louise said, her breath high and tight in her throat. "Dad, hey, I was just thinking of you guys. I wanted to call and say hi and see if you were there. Mark called tonight, and if you're there, please pick up." She waited 10 full seconds. They didn't pick up. "I miss you both, and I hope you're okay," and she didn't know what else to say. "And I love you. I love you both so much. Okay, bye." She went to hang up the phone, then pressed the phone to her mouth again. "Please call me back." She hit disconnect, then stood alone in the dark. The sudden sense of certainty filled her entire body. A clear voice spoke inside her head for the first time since it had told her she was pregnant with Poppy. "I'm an orphan now." The first 2 chapters in How to Sell a Haunted House. If you're interested in hearing more about this story, just leave me a comment and we'll continue reading. see you in the next video.